Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming here tonight as we hear from author Brendan Slocum and author Jeffrey Deaver as they discuss Brendan's debut novel, The Violin Conspiracist. The Violin Conspiracy. Ooh, kill me now. My name is Marella, and I'm the Events and Social Media Coordinator here at Flyleaf Books. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight and for purchasing a copy of Brendan's book from us. That really helps us as we continue to bring more programs to you. To be more accessible, we are recording tonight's event, and it will be up in our YouTube channel within a few days. And lastly, I'd like to kindly ask the authors to be done by 7 p.m. so that we can be mindful of our colleagues who are closing up the store. And finally, I'd like to introduce tonight's authors. Brendan Slocum was born in Yuba City, California, and was raised in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He was the concertmaster for the University Symphony Orchestra at UNCG and served as the principal violist. He has performed with numerous small chamber ensembles and in the Basque String Quartet. For the past 23 years, my age, he has been a public and private school music educator and is a novel educator of the station. He also serves as an educational consultant for the Kennedy Center and as the concertmaster for the Nova Annandale Symphony Orchestra. We also have Jeffrey Deaver, who is the #1 international best-selling author of more than 40 novels, 3 collections of short stories, and a nonfiction law book. His first novel, featuring Lincoln Rhyme, The Bone Collector, was made into a major motion picture starring Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie. In 2014, he was the recipient of 3 Lifetime Achievement Awards, and as a former journalist, folk singer, and attorney, he was born outside of Chicago and has a Bachelor of Journalism degree from the University of Missouri and a law degree from Fordham University. Please give it up for our authors.
Thank you, Morella and Maggie and Renee, everyone at Flyleaf, my local bookstore. It's so good to see you here. And Brendan, welcome to Chapel Hill.
Thank you so much.
I am just awed to be in conversation with this gentleman to talk about The Violin Conspiracy. The book is a coming-of-age novel. It's a crime novel. It is a love story on several different levels. It is a family saga. And it's a novel that deals with a very serious topic of politics and society that we'll talk about later. But right now, I want to tell you a little bit about the book. Excuse me. The book focuses on our wonderful protagonist, Raekwon McMillan, or Ray. He is a prodigy of a violinist, playing the concert circuit internationally, and he discovers, to his horror, that his beloved violin, which is very personal to him, but also extremely valuable, has been stolen, and it's being held hostage for ransom, if you can imagine that. The story then splits, and we see one theme, I guess we could say contrapuntally, 2 different themes going on at once there. That's the extent of my musical knowledge. I've expended that now. And we see Ray, who is desperately, of course, trying to find his violin, working with the police and others, and all the while preparing for his appearance in the world's most prestigious violin competition in Moscow that's coming up. And what does he have to practice with? A rental. I don't mean like from Music Express or anything like that. I mean, this is a very nice rental, but it's not his violin, the one that he loves and the one that he understands, and understands him, you might say. Well, while that story is going on, through flashback, we see the story of Ray's of youth, how he is moving up in the world to become the genius and the talent that he has become now. And it's not an easy route. It's not an easy route for anybody. It's not an easy route for him. Um, Also, as part of this portion of the tale, we learn how he came upon this violin, which I have to say his family refers to charmingly as that fiddle. Now, I live in fear of giving away twists and turns and spoilers. So I'll turn it over to Brendan now if he wants to add a little bit more about the novel plot-wise or anything else. So we've got a lot of questions coming up, but you may want to just fill in where I was too cowardly to maybe go out on a limb and risk giving something away.
I think you did a fantastic job actually at
Okay.
summarizing without giving anything away. So
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I had a review once. I write a lot of short stories, and short stories are all about the twist and surprise. So I'm reading the publisher's review of this a book of mine that had the short story in it. First sentence gave away the killer. And you want to know who was the next victim in my next short story? A name that was very similar to the critic. Not exactly the same, but similar enough. All right, well, let's just kind of jump into the novel itself now. I mentioned that it was a love story on several levels. And there's a love theme that's romantic. There's the family love, but there's also the love of music. And you have made music really a character unto itself in this novel. You write about pieces, composers, passages, techniques, phrasing, and you don't shirk, you don't pull back. These are not short, simple passages, and yet they come alive. We understand. I'm not going to go into the details of certain classical composers and the concert masters and famous performers. I'll leave that for you to read in the book. But you're really you feel what they felt, and you see and hear what they saw and heard. And is there a question attached to this? Well, I guess maybe there is, and it would be this. How did you manage to take the language of music that you clearly have felt all your life, the love of that, and translate it into words, the language of words and prose that comes through so immediately and quickly, and I guess I would say emotionally?
Thank you, first off, for those kind words. I really appreciate that. And thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate that as well. As a musician, when you are performing, when you're playing, you become intimate with the piece. You pour everything you have into it, your entire being, your body, your soul. You just give it everything that you've got. And it means so much to you as a performer, not only learning the piece, but performing the piece so that the audience can experience the same type of joy that you get as a player. And I really wanted people to understand, non-musicians, what it is that a professional musician or anyone who just loves music, loves to make music, what it was that we experienced as we do that. And in my initial writing, it was very, very technical. Everything was technical. I was using musical terms like Mozart and I were having a conversation. It was just everything was this.
Sorry, that would be a great conversation to sit down.
That would be maybe in my next book I'll do that. So a lot of the terminology that I was using, it made perfect sense to me. So I would have readers. I'd say, "Hey, does this make sense to you?" Absolutely not. This is like a foreign language. Well, yeah, there's a lot of Italian terms in here for the music stuff, so it really is a foreign language, and they just didn't get it. So I would think about metaphors. What am I thinking about? If I was listening to the Mendelssohn Concerto, having listened to it a million times, having performed it 30 years ago, but I did perform it, I knew what it made me feel like. I knew what I wanted to express to people who'd never heard it before. So what kind of metaphor would I use to describe this passage or to describe this cadenza? And I remember specifically my violin teacher, when I was learning it, she told me about the cadenza in the Mendelssohn Concerto. She said, this short little passage, it really tells a story. Whatever that story is, if you don't like the story that you play the first time, tell a different story. Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, wow, that's really, I can do that. So let me see if I can find some metaphors that would jump out to people, to a non-musician. This was really written for a non-musician. And I'm hoping that it came across that way. I think people kind of get the idea that, wow, you really do experience, it is an experience that you go through when not only you perform, but you listen to it. And I did want to share that with everyone on the page, and I hope it jumped off to people on the page.
Well, I was fortunate that I grew up in a household where classical music was quite common, listening to, not performing, I will add quickly. And so a lot of it resonated with me, but I've talked to other people who've read it who knew nothing about classical music. You know, if it's not Taylor Swift, they're not interested. But then with this book, they're interested now because it does come alive. And you know, notes are notes, right?
Right.
Phrasing's phrasing. And so that just, you've done such a great service creating an emotional bond between the music, not in addition to the characters, but between the music and the readers. Now, I had another question. We all know about, maybe you don't, but I'll share it with you quickly. Yo-Yo Ma, the famous cellist, left his $2.5 million cello in the back of a New York City taxi cab. I know you all are horrified, don't worry, it had a good ending. But that was I think his first comment was, "I'm so stupid." And you know, you can't argue with that, really. You know, $2.5 million in the back of a taxi cab. Was the Violin Conspiracy based on a real event, or it was? Oh, talk about it.
It actually was. And it's referenced in the book, a 1953 Eugene Lehman violin. I owned a 1953 Eugene Lehman that was stolen my senior year of high school.
Oh, no.
And every bit of emotion that Ray experienced on the page, I did my best to just, I had to go back in my mind, and it's not like I don't remember exactly how I felt. I wanted people to feel the pain that he felt when his violin was stolen. I actually still feel a great deal of pain when I think about that violin, because it was the first one that I owned outright. It was a fantastic instrument, and it was supposed to take me through college and take me through my professional career, and I never got a chance to do that with that violin.
So no hope of recovery, it just vanished.
You know, I'm holding out hope. It's been 30 years, but I'm still holding out hope. I really am. So if anybody sees a 1953 Lehman, it's mine. I'll be happy there's a small reward attached as well. But that feeling of just emptiness and just of loss, I really wanted that to come across. I've never been able to really express how much and how deeply it affected me just losing that instrument. And you know, like Ray says in the book, he felt like it was his fault. Yeah. It wasn't his fault, but no, I felt like had I not gone out of town, had I put it someplace else, you know, had I stuffed it under someone else's bed instead of mine, I'd still have it today.
Well, this brings up a very interesting point in the book. The world of ultra expensive instruments. And I'm not going to say how much, and I'm not going to do the maker of Ray's violin. I'll let you discover that, and I think you may see a certain familiarity about it. But these things are astonishing, and I can't imagine owning something that small, that expensive, and being responsible for it, carrying it around all the time. And Ray was very, very careful. This was kind of in the back of his mind. He carried it with him everywhere. He was very careful. Also, you have to be careful about the conditions, because humidity could, I don't know if it would actually destroy.
Oh, yeah. Humidity, cold, heat, they're very temperamental. Very temperamental.
And I guess these older ones are, because I don't really know that much about musical instrument construction, but was there something about a 200-year-old violin or instrument? Was the wood better then? Is it the aging that has made it better? What does it?
That is the $1,000,000 question. $1,000,000 question. Thank you. I'll be here all night. Thank you very much. With those old, really valuable instruments, the world may never know, because the only way to truly discover what makes them so fantastic is to break it apart and figure it out from the inside out, and no one is willing to do that.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you could test the varnish all day long, you could age the wood until the cows come home. It won't make a bit of difference until you actually break it apart and examine it, and no one's going to do it.
Well, I found also very interesting was the business of these instruments. They're insured, of course, but it's stolen. Well, the insurance company isn't going to say, "Oh, I'm going to write you a check for, I'm not going to give it away, but X number of dollars. Here you go." They're like syndicates, and you try to make money and bring people in that they can kind of share the instrument. And I would imagine there are not a lot of these things around.
Right.
You think? I mean, and then the instrument that he rented or borrowed, he goes through several stages to find one, and they sounded like they were very good instruments. They just they weren't him.
Right.
Is that right? There's like
Absolutely.
a symbiosis between
Yes.
an instrument and a person.
I like to say, when you find, are there any musicians out in the audience? I know I've met a couple earlier, a few musicians. When you have an instrument, I'm going to speak primarily about violin. When you have the violin that you want, it becomes a part of you. It really is an extension of you. You can play any instrument, but you can only make music with the one that's yours. I remember the current violin that I have. I must have tried 30 instruments before I found the one that I liked, the one that spoke to me. And for an instrument that it's an investment. It is a lifelong investment, and you carry it everywhere. Like in the book, I take my violin when I'm leaving rehearsal. I go to the grocery store. It's strapped to my back. I don't leave it in my car. I go to the bathroom in a restaurant. I take it with me. It really is a part of you, because the music that you make, the music is here, and it's here, but the instrument is the tool that gives you the opportunity to express that music. And you work really hard to find the perfect tool. Sometimes you need a 3/4 inch nail or a Phillips head screwdriver. If you find the perfect tool, it's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. And it really truly is an extension of you. And when you lose that, it's like losing a piece of yourself. It truly, truly is. It's, to this day, I feel like there's a small portion. I think it's right here that my Lehman used to be, and there's just a small hole that my Lehman violin is just, I have a nice one now, but it's not my Lehman, and that part is always going to be gone. I will, until I get it back. Hint, hint, reward.
I like that. I like until.
I'm an optimist.
Good. Another thing I found quite interesting was the business of classical music. Because it is a business. It's art, but it's music, like writing fiction. Like what we do, it's art and it's business. We're manufacturers of a product. And, you tend to think classical music rises above. I'm not going to mention Pam and Tommy, which some of us might have been watching on Hulu. I don't know if you know that, Pamela Anderson and Tom. Okay.
It's on my list.
Okay. Don't. It's not like we're recording this or anything.
Oh,
I can't wait till next Tuesday. No, I'm not going to. But anyway, we think of rock music and the groups throwing televisions out the hotel windows. Well, classical music doesn't quite rise or lower to that level, but there's some operators in this world. There's kind of an underbelly, and I think about the one scene that really came home, or a series of scenes actually, where although Ray is one of the best violinists in the world, maybe of all time, there are certain individuals who think that that's not enough. He needs an image. He needs a hook. He needs public relations. And I'm not going to tell you how that, obviously I've set it up, I'm not going to tell you how this resolves itself, but I have a feeling that was not made up. That is something that you have actually witnessed.
I'm not going to say that it was made up. I did a lot of modifications. Okay. That is true, that business aspect of it. You do have to pretty much have, I'm reluctant to say a gimmick, but for lack of a better term, a gimmick. And in the story for Ray, he felt like he needed that extra edge. Like you said, he was one of the best violinists around, but that's not enough. And I think that speaks to the racial discriminatory aspect that we're probably going to dive into in just a moment.
We'll discuss that, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But anyway, I did find that quite interesting. But on the other hand, there are individuals in his world who are, you almost get choked up reading about them. They're so generous. They are so supportive. And what do they care about? They care, and I'm talking at all levels, conductors, concert masters, fellow musicians, and agents and people who are not on stage. all they care about is getting good, beautiful music into the ears of and hearts of the audience, because that's just a good thing, and that's what they care about. And they don't care about making money. That's their goal. And I think about buskers. The busking is standing on the sidewalk with an open violin or guitar case and playing for people. You don't do that to make money. You may make some coins, but you do it for the love of playing. But you also do it because you're giving people something. And whether they give you a nickel or a quarter or a dollar, it doesn't really matter. You can kind of see them look at you, and you can tell in their eyes that you've affected them, if only for maybe 3 minutes as they walked past. They paused and walked past. Okay, the competition. This is the Tchaikovsky?
Yes.
Tchaikovsky violin competition. Is that a real one?
It's real.
All right, it sounded so real. I mean, I'll tell you, and it is a nail biter. And have you ever competed in one? And I have to ask this part too. If you did, were you as nervous as I was reading about competing?
I have not competed in the Tchaikovsky competition. I'm aged out. It's like, you have to be a certain age in your 20s. Had I started when I was maybe 4 or 5 years old instead of 9 years old, I probably would have had the ambition to compete, but unfortunately, I didn't start until I was 9, so that was late, getting a late start.
That was considered late. So 4-year-olds will, I guess I've seen some young kids play, but I guess they make small violins. That's kind of a naive question. Because,
very tiny. They're like toys. Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah.
And they can produce a pretty good tone.
When you're a 4-year-old playing violin, that's what you do. You don't play outside. You don't kick a ball. You don't do ABCs. You practice.
It's your whole life. So someone at that age, what age would a Tchaikovsky competitor begin competing? Is that young adult?
Probably around age 12, 13.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Really?
They would prep for like 3 years for that competition.
Well, and that would, the competition you can see, I won't give anything away because you absolutely, if you haven't read that yet, you'll be sitting on the edge of your seat as that progresses. But you competed in some things, I assume.
Oh yeah, I've definitely been parts of some competitions. Yes, I've taken part.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. I write about car chases and gunfights, but that kept me on the edge of my seat much more than that.
You heard it. You heard that, right?
Well, I read, I think, one review that I found just fascinating that said what you do for classical music is what the protagonist of Queen's Gambit did for chess, and. I can feel that parallel because I can't do either. I can't play either. Can't play the violin and can't play chess. But if you saw that, it was a very magical relationship she had with the game, just like you have with the music. Now I mentioned at the start, rather nebulously, that the book also deals with something else, an important thing. And I heard a critic or author some years ago, I can't remember who it was, say this, and I've carried it with me all along, that one can never be a great American novelist unless he or she writes about race in America. You can be a very good novelist, but you cannot be a great novelist. And the Violin Conspiracy talks about race and examines it very tellingly. Ray, who's black, is making his way through a world that is predominantly white, not exclusively, but predominantly white. And he's not naive. He's a kid, he's a teenager, young teenager. He's been around, he's seen things. He's aware that prejudice exists. But it never really comes home to him. It never hits him in the gut the way it does when he begins performing professionally. And there are 3 incidents I just want to mention to kind of flag them for you. I don't want to go into the details. Again, I don't want to be a spoiler here. But 3 that just were haunting, and I carry with me now. And the first one was where he was asked by a friend to play, was it a quartet, string quartet at a wedding?
Yeah.
And he's sitting in, he's standing in because somebody couldn't make it. And it's his first paying gig. And he's saying, it's like $200. And he's, I can make money playing? Wow. And he's very excited about going to this wedding, which is exclusively white. And I'll say only that he knocks on the door to come to the wedding. The door opens, somebody looks down at him, and basically closes the door. And although well, I don't want to give anything away. You have to read the scene, but it's very, very compelling. The more harrowing scenes, though, that come later in the book are involve law enforcement. One in the South, Louisiana, one in the North, Boston, and they're all too familiar to us. To anybody who has a television nowadays, they're all too familiar. And I'm sorry, I'm going to remove that qualifier. To anybody who has ever had a television, it's not just nowadays. Anybody who has ever had a television, these incidents grab you and they stay with you. And I guess I have to ask. I was thinking, you write about them so powerfully and with such credibility. Have you experienced that yourself, or do they come out of an experience of a loved one or a friend? If you're comfortable talking about that, I would really like to know.
I am totally comfortable talking about it. One, because I am sitting next to Jeffrey Deaver. Two, because I have two of my beautiful cousins in the audience.
Hello, cousins.
And three, because you guys are here, and I thank you guys so much for coming. I really do. So I'm happy to talk about it. The scene that you mentioned, the wedding scene, that was actually taken, I modified it slightly. It wasn't a true event. The quartet that I played in the best quartet, we played at a wedding. We thought we played wonderfully. You know, it was fine. The bride was happy. The father of the bride could not get us out of the church soon enough. Yeah. And after he shooed us out, he said to me, "You ruined my daughter's wedding." Yeah. And I was, okay, well, did we play a wrong note? You need to leave. I said, well, you need to pay us. You need to get out of here now. And that was the first time that I had ever, and I think I was 20 years old in college. That was the first time I truly experienced hatred.
Just like Ray. Yeah.
I hope it came across the same way that I experienced it.
I think you used that very line, if I'm not mistaken. You ruined my daughter's wedding.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And I just got livid. My blood pressure went up. And, it's just something that, from my background, I cannot imagine it. It's incomprehensible. It's like, aliens coming from planet Xantar and confronting you. What on earth is this?
Yeah, it was a new experience. It was very painful. When I was writing that scene and I had readers go through it and editors, they did not want it in the book because they thought it was so far-fetched. They were like,
seriously,
like this.
Seriously.
Yeah. Things like this don't happen.
So they live on the planet Xantar.
Pretty much. And I had to fight. I really fought hard to keep that scene in. And in the end, I told them this really happened to me. Yeah. And in the end, and when everything was said and done, they were like, okay, you know what, you're right. And in particular, it was during the summer of 2020 when everything happened with George Floyd. Once that happened, eyes really opened. And like, oh, wow. I guess things like this really do take place. Yes, they do. I've been telling you this the whole time. And as far as the Baton Rouge scene, this is one reason I will never go to Baton Rouge again, because that exact same thing.
I deduced that one. I wasn't going to ask specifically, but it's like that is a state that this man is never going to go to
never.
again.
If there was a case with $10 million in it, said, "Hey, Brendan, all you have to do is go to Baton Rouge, pick it up." No, I'm going to pass. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't do it. It was the only difference between Ray's experience in the book and mine. Ray went to jail. I didn't. I was on the ground, hands and knees, with my hands up with a gun drawn on me because I put on my left turn signal to turn left, but I was in the right lane, and that's what happened because of that.
It's a capital offense in Louisiana.
Apparently, yeah, on Sunday.
Oh, well, of course, on Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday.
Apropos of this, we didn't really get a chance to talk about all the wonderful characters in the book. You populated with such incredible
You know, if I could just say the funny thing about those characters, every single character in that book, every single one, I know all of them. I have run across. At some point, I've met every single person. Every single one.
Whoa, do you keep a notebook and write this stuff down?
It's all here.
Good memory.
From age 9, it's all here.
If you can memorize a score, a Paganini score, you can remember people you know.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe my favorite, aside from Ray and some of the other folks in the book, is his grandmother. And oh my gosh, what a feisty, put up with no nonsense woman, sense of humor, loyal, and let's see, I can't remember exactly why he comes to her, but he's had an incident of the sort we're just talking about. And and I'll let you read this again too, but she gives him advice on what to do when confronted by racism. And she says, and you're going to be confronted by racism. This isn't the last time, grandson. And I know that's advice he's going to carry around for the rest of his life. And he struggles. Oh my gosh. I mean, I got angry at the incidents that Brendan described. And he's human. Ray's human. He's going to get angry too. I'm curious, do you have a grandma like that? Or
My grandma Nora was, she, as I was writing her, she was right here next to me, and I could hear her voice as I was writing, because she was just the sweetest woman you've ever met. She was so sweet and so loving and so caring, and she would say things like that to me, to all of her children, all of her grandchildren, and I really wanted, as for those of you that haven't read it, Ray really does struggle with, he could go one way or the other. He could just be bitter. He could be angry because of all the events that take place and all the unfairness that he has to go through and all the hardships. He could be bitter. He could be, in a sense, it would be justified. But he listens to his grandmother's advice because he loves her so much. Stay that sweet boy that you always are. Stay that way. Be respectful. Give respect. Be respectful. And he follows her advice. He could have turned out and just been an angry dude, and I didn't want that, because I like to think that with the instances that I've experienced, I want to think that that's the type of person that I turned out to be. I've run across so many, challenges and racism and discrimination. It's simple to be angry all the time. It's simple to just flip out. That's the easy road. But I didn't want to do that. I don't want to represent myself. I don't want to represent my family that way. I don't want to represent Black men that way, because there's so much more to us than just angry. There's so much more. And I was really hoping that people would see, oh, wow, it's great that even though he's gone through so many hardships, he really keeps it together. That's awesome. Wow, there's hope for everybody.
Yep. Where that strength comes from is, Grandma had something to do with it, but it's built within him as well. Now comes the part where, you're thinking you're going to ask questions. No, not yet. We've got two writers up here, so you can listen in if you want, but we're going to share some stuff. The world of writing, as you know, is divided into two camps, and the plotters and the pantsers. And by that I mean plotters are outliner, pantsers are those who write by the seat of the seat of the pants. They sit down with a blank piece of paper, if anybody still does that, they might. Or a blank screen, and they just let the story go where it will. Now, I myself am an outliner. I'm an inveterate outliner. One is not better than the other. It's just what you're comfortable with. And I outline all my books extensively. And mine take place over a short period of time, a lot of intertwining, subplots and things. So outline really helps me do that. Some people don't outline. I mean, I think of a few people like George R.R. Martin, who wrote The Game of Thrones, Michael Connelly, Harry Bosch, Lee Child, Jack Reacher, Stephen King. They don't outline. And if those guys keep at it, they may be successful someday. But I'm not that way. Now, the Violin Conspiracy is structured, I would say almost symphonically structured. You have your adagio movement, and you've got your andante movement, and you can't have two of those together, because if you've got two adagios, you fall asleep. If you've got two andantes, the second one loses its impact. But it's and then there's a crescendo, of course, and then the coda at the end, that kind of slow, soft reconciliation the themes you've introduced. You had to have done some planning ahead of time for this. Could you talk a little bit about your writing process and maybe specifically about how long it took and what the process was? You mentioned readers and so forth, and I think our viewers here at home might be curious about that.
Sure, I am an outliner as well. The idea, I with this story in particular, I really wanted to tell this story, and I wanted to tell it chronologically. As I was doing the outline, it's like, okay, well, you mentioned them like a symphony, and as a musician, I guess it's just beaten into me. This is how things go. There's a specific way to this movement, this movement, this movement. With the different themes and everything. Definitely outlined everything, and as I was writing, I have a really good agent who I would toss my ideas. I'd send him 2 chapters, and okay, this is great. You might want to consider moving this here. Well, I don't know about because if we do this, okay, great. So it enables me to write really quickly. And being a musician, hours and hours and hours of practice. When I was in college, I would practice 3.5 hours every day, every single day. So that was no big deal. That was just natural. That's what you do. So I would sit down and write. And during the summer of 2020, there was nothing else to do except eat and eat and get fatter and fatter and fatter. I'm like, okay, well, I should probably stop eating because I'm not going shopping to buy any new clothes. So I would write every day, and I was given the assignment. I should do 2,500 to 3,000 words a day. Okay, no sweat. Boom, I knocked it out. So I actually wrote Violin Conspiracy in 2.5 months. And it took, with all the edits and everything, I listened and I took every bit of advice that I had been given through readers and editors and everything. I took it all to heart. It took just as long to edit it as it did to write it. I wanted to make sure that everything was, and there were a lot of fights with, okay, this is going to stay in. No, you got to take that out. And I lost a few, but I won a few. One in particular that I won, this was a knockdown, drag-out fight. There's a scene with when Ray is doing a clinic, and that there's a kid that comes in and wants to play something, and no, you can't do that because of this. No, I'm going to do this because that was a week-long fight. That was a fight. I think my knuckles were bloody after that one. That was a tough one. But I definitely like to plot things out, and I like to write as if I'm watching a movie. I really want to see, hey, what's going to happen next? I know what's going to happen next, but I want the reader to be on the edge of their seat. I want them to turn the page. I want them to turn the page before they finish reading it. I want them to get to the next part so quickly. I got to know what's going to happen. So I try to make things. I'm a fan of cliffhangers, as I know you are. And I got to say, the way that you write, some of the things that you do with the voicing is just, with the perspective is unbelievable.
Well, thank you.
I tried it a couple of times, very unsuccessfully. I tried. It's like, no, okay, I can't do that. I'm going to leave that to Jeffrey, but it's just, I just wanted to throw that at you. I'm having a fanboy moment.
It's so funny. Oh my goodness. I can't imagine that I'm here with the author of the Violin Conspiracy. I couldn't believe it. Well, also talking about nuts and bolts now, presumably, I'm talking about research primarily, you got the music stuff down. I would imagine that pretty much came naturally to you. You didn't have to look up a clef or the double dots over something. I think those are notes. I don't know how that works, but you knew that stuff. But there's also an international setting, and different cities we see characters in different cities. And the plot unfolds there, and that's very credible too. So you must have done a lot of other research. Now, in 2020, you're not gonna get on a plane and fly over to Moscow. I assume. Definitely now, you're not going to fly over to Moscow.
Definitely. Yeah, I did an extensive research. I interviewed FBI agents. I interviewed insurance agents. I interviewed detectives. I interviewed the art theft department in New York.
I was going to ask if that's real.
That's a real thing. Yeah. I know everything about the Tchaikovsky competition. I know what time they go to dinner. I know how many beds are in the rooms. I know what line they stand in. I know where the jewelry store is. Everything. Extensive research. I wanted to make it as authentic as possible, I was actually at an event last night, and when I was saying, Ray took the violin and he did X, Y, and Z, someone thanked me because I've read so many books where people go to this particular place, and that's not the right place. But you actually got it. You were totally accurate. I wanted, because I knew that was going to happen. If I'm reading a book and I know something, if someone's written a book about music and they say something that's just off the wall, okay, I can't read this anymore. This is not. Yeah, you didn't know what you were doing, or you just didn't care to take enough time to, make it authentic for the reader. So I really wanted people. I understand the musical aspect. I totally get it. So I really wanted it to be as authentic as possible, so people wouldn't have to ask, "Oh, is that real? Oh, is that how it goes? Oh, I wonder if he knows how to do that for real." I want people to know that this is my life. This is what I have dedicated my life to, and I want to share it. I want to share it the way that I've lived it. So I want it to be as authentic as possible.
But it didn't stand out. I mean, somebody would not read that and say, "Oh, he's showing off." It's like integrated into the story. The locations, for instance, in the competition. I mean, you're not going to get a letter like I get occasionally. It goes like this: "Dear Mr. Deaver, thoroughly enjoyed your recent book. Like the characters, the plotting was very good. However, on page 34, I couldn't help but notice that you referred to a Pentium 996 processor when you know that Pentium 996 processor was not released until 6 months afterwards. And my initial reaction is, get a life. It was a typo. But you know what I do? I write them a letter of apology because I did something that created a speed bump in their enjoyment of the book, and we can't have that. These books, they have to be seamless. Yeah. Yours has got to be in tune. Our books have to be. Our books are there for them. Now let's see. I had just one or two other questions. I don't want to. We okay for a few more questions because I want to get some from the audience too. Okay. Well, I have to ask this, and I think you may have answered it when I was listening outside. I want to get to future projects, but what I'm going to ask is this. The writing, I know it's your debut novel, but the writing is very natural. And it suggested to me that you've done this before. I mean, you've been writing for a while. So do you actually have at home, I'm being a little silly now, but do you have at home, like in the closet, a half-finished manuscript of the Viola da Gamba conspiracy? But you have written before, right? I mean, you must have put words together before. Let's put it that way.
My first manuscript was written 20 years ago.
Okay.
And when I tell you the story is fantastic. The characters are out of this world. The writing is wretched. It is horrible. And I was told how bad it was when I got several rejections. And I'm planning on rewriting it because it really is a good story. But in 20 years, I've taken every single piece of advice. I've worked and I've read and I've written and I've done everything that I needed to do to get my writing tighter, to just make sure that everything is, perspectives. I would shift perspectives like every 2 sentences. And, okay, well, it makes sense in my head, but on the page, it's just garbage. So I really worked to get to the point where we are. And every single person that I let read it, give me your feedback. I want to know. Tell me what it is that you think. What do I need to improve on? I am just like if I'm learning a new piece of music, I want people to hear it. I want people to say, what can I do to improve? I'm totally cool with getting advice and I'm okay with it. If you don't like something, tell me why you don't like it. Maybe I can make an improvement for you. I'm happy to do that. And I think my musical training definitely prepared me for critiques and criticisms. I get it all the time, and that's totally fine. And I learned to separate the good from the bad. If you're just being mean and nasty, that's one thing. But if you're actually giving me constructive criticism, I'm going to take it. I welcome it. So 20 years. Took me 20 years.
I think Neil Gaiman said that when somebody tells you they don't like something about your book, speaking of writing, they're almost always right. When they tell you how to fix it, they're almost always wrong. So if somebody doesn't like a passage of book or music, and they're honest about it for legitimate reasons, if they don't happen to like violin, there's nothing you can do about that. They wish you played it on a piccolo. There's nothing you can do about that. that, I think that's a good lesson. It's a good attitude. Yeah. Now, we are running out of time. We want some questions from the audience, but I do have to ask, what's next for the musician Slocum and for author Slocum?
Musician-wise, I'm probably not going to resume my playing in the orchestra just because I'm doing a lot more writing. I'm going to play in the chamber ensembles. I'm doing a lot of string quartet playing. And as far as writing is concerned, I've already finished my second book. The manuscript is turned in and it's being edited right now. Can't wait to tell you what it's about. And books 3, 4, and 5 are already right here. I've gotten up in the middle of the night. Okay, yeah, this is it. This is going to be good. And I've done that like 4 times in the past 2 months. It's like, okay, yeah, I have those ideas for my books. And if I could just tell you what book 2 is going to be about, I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, give us a preview.
I hope you guys are excited too. Maybe it's just me. Am I just... All right. So, book 2, it is music-centered, but it's not like overkill with music. It's a beautiful story. I'm calling it The Composer's Last Score. America's preeminent composer. This guy's bigger than Beethoven, Bach, Mozart. He's the biggest composer in the world. His 150th anniversary celebration is coming up of his birth. So his family foundation, they're like, okay, we want to put on a big, it's going to be a big show. They hire a musicologist to do some research. During his research, the musicologist discovers that maybe this composer didn't write all of his music after all, and he could have actually appropriated it from a Black woman who we know today would be living with autism. So it's a story of appropriation, and there's some murder and there's some theft, and then the family will stop at nothing to keep this information from getting out. And what are they going to do? And is the musicologist going to... We'll see. It's a good story.
You don't have to have a copy right now.
I don't. Edward is reading over it right now.
It sounds good. I'll certainly look forward.
How does that sound? Does that sound good? Do you want to hear about book 3? No,
all right. Well, we've got a few minutes left. We're going to want to make sure we hit the time just right, but I'm sure you all have some questions. And I want you to know, I teach courses in writing, and I call on people. So this gentleman is saying, Preston is saved you, so he's going to jump in now.
You had mentioned, and I didn't even think about it, you had scenes that you had to fight for. So are there any scenes that maybe dealt with something you went through personally in the music world that got taken out that maybe you could tell us about?
Ooh. Yes, we call those scraps. They're in the scraps pile. Let me see, what did not make it in the book? Oh yes, there was an actual character that I loved, and he'll make it into another book. A character, Drew, who is a pianist, an accompanist. And he was no nonsense, and he would just tell it like it is. It was like, okay, that sounded like, you need to do this again. What are you doing? Don't even waste your time. He was just he's from New York and all up in your face. And I like that character. And I'm going to use him someplace else. So when you see Drew,
we know he started.
Exactly. He's a violin conspiracy reject.
Any other questions?
That's a good question.
Yes, right.
More of a comment, but thank you for how you write about music. I know you're addressing it earlier, but as a non-musician, it really wowed me with your expertise, of course, but it just it just really was amazing. And I could hear the music in my mind as I read, and it also said, hey, this guy's for real. He really knows what he's talking about, and it just made the story that much more legit.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I always think it's unfair when someone's super talented in one thing and then super talented in a second thing. So that's not nice. But what are the similarities between being a musician and being a writer? And how did being a musician, you said like you're used to practicing, so you're used to sitting down and writing, but is there anything else that helps you be a better writer? Or even like now that you're doing all these traveling and performances and things as a writer, where does it cross over?
That's a great question. And Jeffrey mentioned earlier, like the structure. It's like the structure of a symphony. You have the allegro, and then you have the andante, then the adagio, and then followed by an allegro at the end. In my music, I think that the music carries over more into the writing than the writing does into the music, just because when I'm playing, if there's a piece that I absolutely love to play, it makes sense to me, and I really want to be as expressive as possible when I'm playing, and I try to evoke that same emotion when I'm writing. So if I'm writing something and I read it, it makes perfect sense to me, so I will have someone else read it. Do you get anything from this? No. Okay, then I need to do it again. Then I haven't done my job properly, and it's okay. It's okay if I haven't gotten to the point where it needs to be just yet. I will get there, just like in my practicing. Yeah, okay, I'm playing all the notes, but I'm not really making music. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I will get it to that point, and if I'm really serious about it, which I am, I will, however I need to do it, whatever I need to do. If I need to rewrite it, 5, 6, I've done that like 12 times. I've rewritten the same thing just to get it to the point where it makes sense to someone else who's a non-musician. Let's say if we're talking about a musical thing. And that was so nice what you said about talented. I'm not going to tell you that I'm a singer too.
You got a microphone there.
I'm actually the singer in a band.
But probably you don't play the violin at the same time. Is that correct?
No, actually I don't.
Just apropos of that, Ernest Hemingway said there are no great writers. There are only great rewriters. And that's true. You cannot polish a book enough to get it to the place where it should be. Maggie, yes?
I have a question. The mother is quite a piece of work. And I just kept waiting for some moment in her to happen, like genuinely happen. So
you got relatives here.
I
Gotta be careful on this one.
was just saying, like that character, and this just to me was just as a mother was just so striking. Like, but just the whole time she just shocked me throughout the entire book. So anyway, congratulations on creating quite a person.
Thank you. And I will go on record as saying that is not my mom. My mom would never actively, your aunts would never actively try to prevent me from playing. It was, I just felt like Mom just didn't get it. She just didn't get Ray. She just, she loved him, but she just did not get him. And that's okay. It's not okay for her to actively try to stop him. That part was not cool. And, I'm sure Mom regrets it in retrospect, but she just did not understand why he was so enamored with music, why music was such a big part of his life. She just didn't get it. So she thought she was protecting him by trying to discourage him from doing this because you're not going to be able to make it. There's no one else that looks like you that does this. I'm trying to spare you a lot of hurt. Mm-hmm. So, that I'm helping you. She really thought that she was helping him, but I had a lot of fights with some readers about Mom. They were just like, no, this is just way too over. I'm telling you, this is how it needs to be. Trust me on this. You got to trust me. But I'm glad that Mom spoke to you that way.
I love the uncle who, now I'm not going to give away the value of this guitar. That was my instrument, this violin. But let's say it's up there. Let's talk 7 figures. And his uncle wanted to buy either a restaurant or buy equipment.
Restaurant equipment.
Buy restaurant equipment. And he said, no, you can just put it up as collateral at the bank. and I'm just trying to picture PNC Bank. Huh? Wait a minute. But some people get it and some people don't. But he had good relatives too, of course. And the uncle wasn't a bad relative. He just, they didn't quite know how to handle this whole thing. It was so alien to them. So.
It really is a foreign, a black man in classical music, you don't see it all the time. And if you're accustomed to, your kids playing video games or playing basketball or whatever, a sport or something, it's just, okay, what do I do with this? How do I support you? Do I really push you into something that I don't think that you're going to be successful in? Do I do that, or do I protect you and keep you sheltered and do something that I think will be acceptable for you in society? It's a tough call.
Yeah. Well, I think our time is about up here. Maybe one more question if you have any. Oh, 2 more questions. Sure, we'll sneak 2 in. We can sneak 2 in, can't we? We'll get 2.
Well, mine is not a question. Mine is actual comment. I was basically just gonna piggyback off what the young lady says. Being a person who's not from the music industry as far as listening to things, I just want to say, like, listening to your book, I didn't listen, I didn't read it, sorry, listen to it. I found that it was very, very, very in-depth, and I couldn't put it down. And I just want to say that when the music was playing and as you was telling your story, I just closed my eyes and I can envision everything that was happening. I think for this to be your first book, I am uber proud of you. I'm like, I cannot express the words how proud I am of you. This is my big cousin. I've heard you play, but like I used to listen to you play on the bands in college, and I was just a little girl. But to listen and then to envision you writing a book and hearing all the music that I know that you are capable of doing, I'm just indictfully proud of you.
Thank you.
All right. Did you have a question?
I did. I have a comment and a question. I definitely want to agree with the two young ladies that was talking about the music. The way that the music radiates off the pages when you're reading it, it was beautifully done. Again, it just kept your attention. And I know for me, I'm an emotional reader where a lot of times in books I have an emotional investment, and I felt like I had an emotional investment in this book with Ray's character, with Grandma Nora, with all of the characters that, you know, even some of the moments you wrote it in a way where you could like really feel what Ray was feeling or really feel the things that was going on around it. It was just, you know, you painted this beautiful picture. It was just beautifully done. I just wanted to let you know that. And the question that I had is, even with the Violin Conspiracy in your book too, that's coming out, did the characters, did they come first or did the plot twist come first in these books?
Good question, and thank you so much for that comment. Definitely the characters. Definitely the characters. I'm a character guy. I actually had to condense in my second book. I had probably like 30 characters. I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to put some of their personalities into, instead of 30, let's see if I can knock that down to 12, and I'll just put all of these different personalities into these people. And I am a people person. As a teacher, I've run across so many different types of students, and one of the things that I'm really proud of in my teaching is that I never teach the same kid. I never teach all of the kids the same way. Each kid has an individual way of learning, and they all have individual personalities, and it's just like, okay, it's not a one size fits all. So I'm totally, I'm all about a different thing for a different person. It's like, this is you, I'll do this for you, I'll do this for you. So I'm all about people, and the character thing, it just, I really had to kind of clamp it down, and characters definitely came first.
Well, I see our time's up now. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Brendan. What a great conversation.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
Hello. I just want to say thank you so much for coming, and thank you to Mr. Slocum and Mr. Deaver for this amazing talk, and honestly, like, celebration of the Violin Conspiracy. So we'll see you again for book 2. Hopefully. Thank you.
I got one out in November.
It's official.